you're the one that most likely will have a anxiety attack.
Yeah. There's this we should be live right now with something new for the people.
Are we
So,
live?
yeah, how do we begin?
Well, these live streams are going to be a little bit different since some of you know we are developing an RPG tactical game. Is it tactical RPG game? RPG tactical game?
Whichever is more comfortable. Usually it's tactical RPG.
Yeah. So yeah, so we're just to chill out and hang out. And in the meanwhile, you can put some questions and we can answer them. It can be related to game development in general or in related to the game industry or any project you have. Like if you have some doubts, then we can try to answer them here. And meanwhile, while RAM programs the game, um, we will just be hanging out. So depending on you, like if you got any question or something, then we can have a conversation here.
Yeah, and it's a good space to talk about whatever video maybe you wanted more information about. I believe yesterday we released about the modular gameplay features, which was really requested, and it was maybe a bit too long, but it has a lot of interesting stuff. So yeah, any type of question, any type of topic should be great to know more about the people who enter the streams and watch our content, right? And meanwhile, well, like Mauricio was saying, we're developing this game. For now, we only have like this movement feature that it is really similar to Valkyria Chronicles, where you have a bar, and whenever you move, the bar goes down, and when the bar reaches its limits, then well, your movement can end, right? So that's what we did on a Spanish stream, but the thing is just doing some game development while getting to know more about the viewers. So yeah, feel free to leave a comment on the chat. Let us know where you're from, what are your interests. It is always really interesting to know more about the community.
Yeah. So I think my question to you is like once you have this system going on, do you got any plan? What are your next steps once you because it looks like you're pretty much there. I mean, still a long way to go, but you got the basics already working. And it looks like it works, but still a lot of features that have a tactical RPG game that we still need to implement. How do you organize yourself for doing this?
Yeah, it's whenever we start any project, it's really important to have an outline about what are the main mechanics, what are the main targets you want to reach. For example, this being a strategy RPG, a tactical, a lot of genres, but if you can visualize like a mix of maybe Final Fantasy Tactics with some uh, elements of Divinity original sin, and with that, you know that we will have turns, right? We will have units. In this case, maybe we won't necessarily be controlling the unit on with this camera, but we wanted to make a mix and match of the stuff that we like and the stuff that we really think that can work well together. In this case, the bar. That Divinity had points where you can, I will use a point to move, and that point gives me, I don't know, maybe 6 meters of movement depending on stat of the character, right? So we decided to make like a little more actiony, like the Valkyria series does, that it uses a bar. And in order to try to get all the framework ready, or at least somewhat ready to start, I made some flowcharts that I'm very fond of. Where are they?
Yeah,
Source.
completely underrated.
Yeah, I have them on docs, flowcharts, game flow. There is a combat flow that I don't know if this PDF is the actual one. I usually do it with the text, and I'm using GraphBees to this code, compile it into a chart, which is really nice because I don't need to waste too much time trying to find a correct place or a nice way to organize my diagrams. So for example, this is the combat flow that it's always open to change, right? Here my combat starts. It wouldn't be a combat if I didn't have on here. Maybe the resolution is not too great. Let me open the PDF. It seems that it's the same. Yeah. We shouldn't start the combat if, well, there are no units from different teams, right? Maybe this can change if we have some map where you're just explorer and you get ambushed or something like that. But for now, that shouldn't be the case. We haven't really defined also how this game will work in terms of how will you explore the map. It could be as simple as Final Fantasy Tactics, where you have a big map and you just select where you want to go. The character moves, and when it's time to battle, then you enter an instance, right? Like a specific map with the elevations and everything, right? But we haven't defined that yet. It's really too early to do that, so I'm just assuming a lot of stuff. So if you have units from different teams, they usually are friendlies, neutrals, and the enemy. Then you get a list of that units. You filter the units that have already been used. If it's the start, then all the units are, let's say, new. And you get the unit with the greatest initiative. That's the unit selection process. Then you assign the turn to the selected unit. Here we could also, it's pretty useful to have a turn, like a turn track. For example, if you have this right here, full screen snip, then you can have something like this where I'm playing my turn but here I will have a track. For example, this is my character A, and we could have a portrait here, and then next is my character B, and like, because one gripe I had with the Final Fantasy Tactics is that I needed to enter a menu. I needed to, like, the pause menu, and then here was a sub menu with the turns, and then here you can see, like, first the knight, the squire, whatever, right? So having that thing as visible as possible should be pretty nice for us. And there are a lot of new tactical RPG games that does that kind of thing, and it really feels really nice.
It's a little complicated genre to work on. The truth is, like, no one.
Yeah, no one really knows if it will work until we do it. It can sound really nice on paper, but we need to do as quick as an implementation in order to iterate on it. So even though here we have a like really structured thing, I don't really need to follow it to to the the letter. We can change. First, we're trying to make it work so we can test on it, and then we can clean it up as we go. And this was the turn of the unit that I won't do because I do not have attacks. Yeah, so probably in today's streams I will concentrate on this flow so I can have a combat and should define the teams. That's split pretty easy. We can use an enumerator in order to change the state of these units. So here I will create one. Oh, and if you guys want to know like how we did something here that it's already working, maybe the bar, how it's working, you can tell us in the chat so we can take a closer look on how to do it. A good tip with the enumerators, and this gets missed a lot. Your first one, well, if you don't know what an enumerator is just a way to save data. It's a data structure, a really simple one, where you can link text as numbers, and that's the most common way. It's just a byte where you have like from 0 to 255, and this is the value 0, 1, 2, 3, and we can add more, right? It's a good way to save states because an enumerator won't give you anything else than one of these values. So having states that don't overlap, for example, if your character is running, your character is not standing still, right? You can't be doing those at the same time. So they are pretty useful for this kind of stuff. And the tip was the first element, it's a good idea to put it to none, because if you, for example, I had here like friendly, and I will add here to neutral, and here I give it enemy. It's not a good idea if, for example, I have this to enemy, and I'm gonna get it enemy.
I got disconnected.
Yeah, it's not a good idea because anytime we're gonna use this enumerator that we're gonna use in our base unit, I'm gonna add it. Here we're handling the movement of all our units. I'm gonna create the enum. Gonna set it up as current team, and here I'm gonna say it's an team. And I forgot there was already a team attitude, but let's use our one for now. Let's use ours. Here, for by default, it's gonna default to enemy. And it may be not something that you would like to have as a default set value, because it can lead to confusion. Maybe you will start asking yourself, why is this unit an enemy? And it would probably be because you haven't set it up at default value at the start. So we can get rid of that problem if we have a non-value. That way, whenever I have a where is my base unit? Whenever I have a non-value and something fails because it doesn't have a team, then I have forgotten about setting it up. So then I can set it up here. The base unit should be none. And if my default value instead of none would be neutral, that I want every unit to be neutral, then I could change it to neutral, but I prefer having a non value here, just in case. And let me check about that team attitude. Team. I believe it's almost the same. Friendly, neutral, hostile. It could work, but no, I'm gonna use mine because this one is used for pound sensing, and I don't want to mess up with that. Then we can continue with the selection process. I should get all the list of the units, and when developing a game at the start, you can create your flow as simple as possible. It's usually recommended. After getting all the stuff that is really important, then you can go and start thinking on edge cases where, what will happen if my combat there are no other enemies, right? But first you need to get some combat in, no? The way we'll do that is by assigning turns. It will be turn based, so it's something really core to our game. And here is where having a little knowledge about the gameplay framework comes really handy. And I don't know if I will bore everyone if I talk more about the gameplay framework.
I have no idea.
Do you know the gameplay framework? I know that you haven't worked too much with blueprints, but
I do have a general idea. I used to have it like deep inside my DNA. Well, back then in Unreal Engine 3 when I was reading the gameplay framework. So you have the player controller, right? Which is it's like the brain of the player, right? It's like the representation of the player, but not like in the avatar, right? So, and then you have the pawn, which is the physical representation in the game from the player, which a pawn can be possessed, right? And of course, you have your game world, which is setups the rules for the game. Classic example, like you have a shooting game, you can have different type of game like capture the flag or deathmatch or team fights. While the core game is still the same, but the rules are different to win inside that level. And I think those three are the most important to me, at least.
You have the most important ones. It's the same as you said. You have a game mode is usually employed when you need to set up rules for the game, and people always have a lot of doubt on what's a rule of the game. A easier way to understand it is something that it's modifying the state of your game. For example, if it's something that will make someone win and the game will end or will enter to another state like game 1, kind of a state, then that's a rule that should really be on the game mode. For example, if it's a racing game, you wouldn't want to have that logic inside any of the cars, that if it crosses first the line, then it wins. The game should be in control of, for example, the a volume that could be our goal, and if some pound manage to touch that goal, then the game mode should decide, because you can also add more complexity to the rules, like something like uh, maybe you have crossed first but you have too much damage, then your scores diminishes and maybe you are not first but you're second, something like that. So in our case, and no, this was not it, something like selecting units and giving them turns should be something that our game mode should handle, because it's a rule of the game. A rule of the game will be, if the unit has no actions, then its end will turn, and we will assign the turn to the next unit with the greatest initiative. So that's a clearer way to understand it. And yeah, also there is a little bit of confusion about the player controller and the pawn. Most of the confusion comes from having where to put the input, and you can put it on both. It really depends on the specific case. For example, if you will have common functionality like pressing pause, maybe if you're in a gamepad, you press start and you want it to be pause, to pause the game, then it shouldn't matter what actor or what pawn I'm controller, or what character. It shouldn't matter. It will always be pause. So you don't want to copy and paste that stuff in the pawn. You can put it in the controller, and that's something that we can do here. For example, here, let me delete one of them. I have it set it up in the possess, auto possess, but I can disable it. I already have a pawn to handle like the selection, and I can move my pawn. Well, I was able to move my pawn, but this is a pawn that has a camera here. So if I press enter, maybe I could bring up a setting menus, but the same should happen if I was controlling this one. So where to put the inputs should really be helpful here, to put it on the player controller that we should have here, default player controller. And here I have a movement, a type of movement, because I wanted to first check some stuff, but now that I'm seeing it again, it may be better if I put this this content in the character, maybe, so we can check it later. But yeah, it isn't too much of a problem for now. So that's one of the ways that the player controller can be really useful. You can possess and unpossess characters. That in our case, it will be pretty useful whenever you want to select a unit, because you will have this top-down view, and I want to click here and I want to possess this character, then my escape command should work, my pause command should also work. So having a good understanding of the gameplay framework should really help a lot.
Yeah, I can see how it does help. I think one important thing before I lost my connection, uh, I was trying to say that at the beginning, especially at the beginning of the game, but it can really be at any stage where you can't really figure out all the things that your game will have. You can have a general idea, and you can do your best to try to predict how your game will look like. Nobody knows until you play the game. Once you play the game, you will realize that some features were not as nice as you would think, or you need to add some features that will actually make the game better. So that can happen at any stage, actually. More often in the beginning, but at the end, even at the end, you can. I mean, there is no time for the game where you cannot change it, so it can become better, right? It's really just a small difference between a good game and a bad game. I think that the best thing you can do is just, try to prepare for the worst in the sense that your framework is really scalable, and like all your code in a way is helping you to make changes without breaking everything, because the last thing you want is like, oh, we want to add this, and it's like, no, our core gameplay framework doesn't allow us to do that, uh, just because it was put on the wrong place, or we didn't make it really uh, flexible enough. Especially at this point, we don't really know what's how's the game is gonna look like at the end. We know it's like a tactical RPG game. We know we will have turns, and we have a general idea of how you should move. Other than that, all the questions will be answered as we develop the game and it evolves into something that we can actually test. And just from testing, we can figure out what needs to be done. But I think you shouldn't get frustrated if like you haven't figured out all the things that your game will have, and you can just start with what you have. And of course, having the knowledge, like all the gameplay framework and a lot of technical things, actually will help you in the future. Like if you're worrying about the 3D art or something, it's good to know what are the possibilities with the current state of technical art, where how you can push the boundaries, or how can you make tools for your game that actually help this type of game to actually develop faster. And as far as programming goes, a good understanding of the framework and how everything works together will help you in the long run if there is any change, which usually there are changes in game development. Creating a game is a constant change, like it's constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly being tested. So it's really hard to have a plan, actually. Even when there is a big company, like it's completely unpredictable.
It's good to mention that you need to know that we are a small team. We're three people. So most of the tips that we will give are in that context on how to ship something with not too much structure, because we do not have the time to invest it in on I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 months of pre-production. We just want to make games, and
Yeah.
And yeah, we could talk about a lot of indie games that we make that we learned a lot from the errors on trying to follow maybe something that could work whenever we have a if well if it was like a big company but it didn't translate well to a small team.
Yeah, I yeah, I think you mentioned something important. Like, yeah, most of the information you get out there is works pretty well for big companies in the sense that you have a lot of people and you want to have all the process, and there is little room for error in this kind of big projects. So you need to have a lot of process, a lot of like set up the pipeline and a lot of stuff. And for indie games, one of the big problems is that the information you get, you get the information of how the big company could work in the internet. Like you get the typical stages of pre-production, production, beta, alpha, beta, release, and all the things that are in between them. So in reality, like especially when you're a small team, you need to, if you follow all those steps and you are like very like step one, then step two, then step three, and then follow, and there is little room to change. Like there is not much flexibility. Like for example, once you're in alpha, there are some things you cannot change. And well, for the most part, it's true. Um, when you try to apply that to indie game development, you end up doing a game. It's like, okay, like Blizzard does it like this, or I don't know, Ubisoft does it like this. Let's make it like this too. And you realize that it's just gonna take so long. Right? If you're making an indie game, more than 1 year is a lot of time because you don't have the resources that the big companies have, where they can have the luxury of developing the game for 2, 3, 4 years, even more. Uh, for indies, like once your budget is out, game over. You don't you don't have much time to finish the game. I think less than 1 year to develop a game is a good timeline for an indie game project. It doesn't necessarily mean that the quality is bad, but I mean, we just can do things that AAA companies cannot. For example, we could actually use products in the marketplace to have a starting point, or even in our final assets, we can use the marketplace to grab assets that we can use in our game. We literally save months of development. Like if we want to create a city or something, if we find a package that actually matches what we want to create, we are saving months of hard work just to create that thing, which you cannot do in a big company because there are copyright restrictions, and of course big budgets doesn't allow you to do this kind of thing because I mean they don't want this. Oh, this same asset was used in another
Yeah,
small indie game,
they get really
and you can
picky.
see it. I don't know. Yeah, in the next Last of Us, something like that. You can see your marketplace package there. But I mean, these guys can take the luxury of doing that because they literally are hiring thousands of people to create the product. So they have the manpower to do that, and they have the luxury of saying, "No, we just do it by ourselves." And but reality is we don't. And I think a lot of indie games think that they, how to say, I mean, a lot of indie game developers dream big, which is fine.
That's
The
great,
problem is,
actually.
yeah,
You,
that's great.
you really need to dream big, but you need to do like really small.
Yeah, eh, in a way that they think they are like a big company. So it's like, we are better than Blizzard, blah blah blah. We can do better because we have Unreal. Unreal is in our side. We can do anything we want because we have Nanite, we have everything. And then you realize that it's not as easy as you would think. And because you wanted to create everything by scratch, you start developing all these original assets for your game that you will think that they give value, but at the end of the day, uh, after 1 year, if you're still developing assets and the game is not finished, you have a problem there. Most indie games fail because of time.
Yeah, you
And
need
of
to get
course,
your
money.
scope really, really tight and realistic. That is the hardest part of all.
Yeah. Um, I think that the best way is just have an idea and develop and try it. I mean, I'm really super fast to prototype and even, I mean, if you have a good idea of what you're creating, for example, we are creating a tactical RPG, we know we are having turns. That's not changing. I mean, we could try to evolve the idea over time, but at least we have something to start with. And we can create something and we can just play the game in a very short amount of time where it's just not possible, where you have many politics and restrictions compared to other big companies.
Yeah, and it's really, at least in my experience, I prefer being indie because most of the decisions that get made make sense. Sometimes you, when you're working for a big company, they one day they just tell you that didn't work. Scratch that. Let's let's do it again, and you really cannot say anything to that because I mean you just know that they already made analysis, and well, if you like the idea, then tough luck because you really do not have the the power unless you are one of the directors, right? But even then, some of the directors are people that have stopped playing games, and I don't know where they are getting their ideas or how they know if it works or not. But yeah, it's you can it's a mixed bag because sometimes they see, well, usually there are more experienced people, so they usually have a knack for that, a good eye, so they can avoid mistakes in the future. But sometimes it's just a marketing decision. Then that really sucks. But what can you do? They pay
Yeah.
you, so
A-
you,
a-
yeah.
Anytime it's a marketing decision, just the game goes really bad. I think. Um, I mean, it's understandable for a big company; they need to recover the money, otherwise, it's not sustainable. Same for indies. I mean, indies are also small companies, uh, but there are a lot of features that is like for big companies. We need to attract the most amount of players: casual players, hardcore players, streamers. I mean, you name it. Any kind of player will want to play this game, and we need to add those features in our game so that casual players can have what they want. Hardcore players can also have what they want. Streamers can also have what they want. For example, like the screenshot features and all those stuff. Those are great things. The problem is where you sacrifice some features for your game just because of a risk in a economical risk, let's just say. And I don't know for you, but for for me, it's like games is like just making art. This doesn't make any difference on art. There are a lot of things you cannot justify in art when you do them. Like it just feels right. It feels right to you, and this is where original ideas comes from. When you start mixing money with art, then you have something really, really bad. Yeah, I think you can also see that in, especially in artists, where they want to paint something like, I don't know, they like to paint the anime chicks, because who doesn't, right? But at the work they're doing the generic buff dude shooter game. I don't know. I mean, they do it right, and they are very professional. But it's like conflicting with their inner desires. But I'm sure if they have a way out to paint the anime chicks and actually make a living out of it, they will take it. There are some questions. Alex asked if we will teach someday how to create art tools in Unreal. I think most importantly, there are several art tools in Unreal. I think we can show how to use them. I mean, in which way situation we can use them. A lot of the art tools are already in there. Quixel has the spline procedural tools and the scatter tools, which are pretty much a lifesaver for trying to save time when doing art. Art tools can really vary a lot, and I believe more related to art is Houdini, where you can actually create tools to develop your game. The problem with tools, which I'm very skeptical about, is that most of the people forget that creating the tool also takes time. Like, for example, you want to create this procedural tool to spawn buildings and everything. That's fine, sounds great. Everyone will finish the game in one button after that. But you don't count the time where you're actually making the tool. And the tool needs to fit a very specific issue. Like, because it's not manually placed, there's always some rule to some unwanted results. Let's say you're creating a city and you have your buildings, and the buildings are not like really in the perfect position, but you can do something about it. And then you go, okay, let's modify the tool, and you continue working on the tool, and you continue working on the tool forever. And then you have a great tool with you lose flexibility anytime you put it, but you also save time, so it's a balance. I guess I will be more interested in teaching pipelines and workflows on how to approach creating game levels than that tool itself.
Yeah, I have seen it happen a lot of times when the development centers on the tool and the tool is great, and then you ask, now, well, weren't we making games here? And and you have too much progress about the game. It's like making your own game engine. And that's a really extreme example, but it usually goes like that.
Yeah, and they actually pay off in the really, really long term. Like,
Yeah,
let's
definitely.
just say your game is a success, and now you're making that part too. then of course there are core features of your games you don't want to change. I mean, successful for one reason, right? But and with that said, you can actually create tools that actually support something that you know is not going to change, and it's already proof that it works. So, I mean, in the really long term, they help. Uh, Lewis Stevens asks, how do you normally implement a modular concept for your blueprint? For example, a widget that creates a table with widgets inside. If I add a button inside another blueprint widget, calling just messes up.
That's actually really interesting. We could shift a little bit of the development here to touch some of the UI, just to show that. That's I believe it's a good idea. Are there any more questions? Because it could get really heavy really fast. And
Not yet.
okay, so then we can start. Let me finish this. Let me
Yeah, up to you.
player no cast player controller. So the thing about modularity, let's start at the base, right? It's good to have modular things. One of the principles of good coding and in general, I believe, is having some decoupling in all of the stuff you're doing, so it can be reused later. So maybe if I create this, for example, the turn system, then it's good to have it decoupled. So if I had another strategy game, I can copy and paste it, and I won't have to deal too much with references. And I wouldn't need to make a compromise and say, well, because I can't just import this part of the system, then I do not I don't have any option but to start creating on top of this project. That the thing about that, you learn a lot of things during the project, and having to deal with all that baggage after all your lessons are learned, it's really bad. It encourages to keep making the same mistakes and the code to keep getting more dirty, right? There isn't such a thing as perfect code. So even if you are trying to aim for modularity, you really need to put some some limit on it, because the same thing as building a great tool, you could end up with 3 months in of development. And again, we're talking in the indie perspective. We do not have 3 months to build a tool or to build a perfect framework, right? That's why sometimes it's just better to have a quick outline to know what you want to achieve, and then do something called tracer. No, it was tracer bullet development. Where do you know what a tracer bullet is? Just so we are
I
in the
don't.
yeah. So heavy machine guns, or that kind of turrets where you have that barrel that goes around. Yeah, every, I don't know, maybe 1 in 10, there is a bullet that is not a real bullet. It's just a bullet where it makes light, so it leaves a trace. So the it's easier to see where the bullet is going. And I can show it really fast, because like we are not native speakers, so I had to search for it. Where is my, here it is, tracer bullets, tracer ammo. And this is a great example. You see in games maybe too much of this, but even though I'm seeing here like a trail, this is not a real bullet. This is just a tracer bullet that lets me be more accurate. So if you're seeing only this trace, the gun is probably firing more quickly than that you can see, because bullets travel really fast. So the thing about tracer bullet development is that you just want to know how far of the target you have you're aiming, right? So for example, if my aim was to make this system, excuse me, to make a strategy game, what I would do first is trying to make it as bare bones as possible, that I can play it, so I can see if my mechanics are working properly or not, and I shouldn't waste too much time in, for example, here, where is it? Here we talk about an initiative value, and we could have a lot of systems that work with stats and well, how to determine the health of a unit and a lot of formula, but I really do not need any of that for my game to work. I can hard code those values. I can even overlook those values. I only need the initiative for now. So that's kind of the tracer development that we're looking for. So for example, if here we had, and this is more applicable to software development, but in game development it works too. In software development you have like all kind of three boxes, where here you would have the front end, and the front end is just the stuff that the user sees. Here is the graphic interface. Here's the backend, that is all the processing stuff, all the functions that the front end will call. And maybe you could have here a database, and the same could be done for gaming. For here could be all our game logic. Here it could go or our menus or inputs, and here it could be all our data, right? Because you want to and this is really important, you want to make a game that is data driven, so it's really easier to tweak stuff. If you have all the, for example, all the units in a data table here, it will be easier than having to look for the blueprints and then change some value there. So it's best to have a data table which have maybe a knight and the health value and the initiative value, etc. But we really do not need to create this data table at first. That's something extra. For the combat to work, we just need maybe to create the main menu. We need to create the way we are gonna select things, and I'm gonna call it main menu. The buttons, and here I just need to create how will the damage will be handled, how will the turns, and maybe a win condition or win or lose condition. And here I could only need the initiative. So we are not developing the all the game initiative. We're not developing all the game. We're just doing like a trace here, that it will be like our tracer bullet. So whenever we have this, even though if I went through other path, it won't work, right? But what I want to for it to work is the combat, so we don't need to waste too much time in other areas, like polishing the menu or like adding, I don't know, randomization for the initiative, etc. with this, it's really easy to know if it's working or not. And if it's not working, then I can, like, using the same analogy of the tracer bullet, I can aim again and do, maybe I could add something here that can make it more fun, or add a new mechanic that will define the core mechanics. And that's the fastest way that we can develop stuff that we know that after 3 months we will have something fun, because having something fun is the hard part. We're talking about, yeah, we're gonna do a strategy game, but everyone can do a strategy game. We just need to select units and move them around. But if we don't add something else, maybe it's the way the units will behave, maybe it's some subsystem that will make it really interesting, that we have planned, but we will not, we will comment on more stuff later. But we need to know if it's working, and if it's not working, we can iterate. Game development is all about iteration, and maybe Mauricio can talk more about it. But yeah, we're trying to and just as a side note, that type of development is different from doing just a prototype, because a prototype, you just want to have it somewhat ready, even though we will use assets like from the marketplace for a prototype and see if they work, and try a lot of stuff. The big difference between those two is that whatever we do for a prototype, in software development terms, a prototype should be discarded entirely. From the prototype, you should only get the lessons that you have learned, and have what worked, what didn't work, and then start over. We do not have the time to do that, so we're doing that tracer bullet development. So whatever we build here should be like clean and modular, or not so modular, but at least flexible enough so we don't have to rework and what's the work I'm looking for, refactor a lot of stuff. Was that clear? So
I try to process it, but from what I understood, like, yeah, let's make it more modular.
yeah, it's like getting the mood right of the level before decorating everything. And I know that
Okay.
a lot of that stuff can be like, you can polish it so you can get the mood, but yeah, I don't know what's a good comparison for art.
But interesting. I didn't know about that. I never heard that term.
Yeah, it's
I'm an inner, according to my paper.
with that being said, now we can actually answer the question on the specifically on the widget. The way you want to create stuff. Let me see. Let me read it again, because I went on a. How do you normally implement a modular concept for your blueprints? Example given: a widget that creates a table with widgets inside. If I add a button inside another widget, another blueprint, widget scaling just messes up. Let's test it. So I can maybe create the main menu. Why not, right? We can add that. We're our own bosses, which sounds pretty nice, can be pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And I will create a UI
Be
folder
careful.
here. What?
Be careful with being your own boss.
Yeah. And we can go on a long tangent about being your own boss, uh, which sounds great, but you need to know a boss is someone that will make sure that the work gets done, and you do not. It's it's pretty difficult to be the one that have to be like pushing yourself for the work to be done and where to stop pushing yourself. So yeah, you end up working weekends without realizing, and then why am I so tired?
Yeah, there's a right way to be your own boss and a wrong way. Yeah, sadly, most people experience the wrong way first, because that's life. You have to learn. But yeah, we can really go into another tangent, which I'm up for it. Yeah, especially when if you concentrate on coding. But right now you're doing the other example, which I'm not sure how long it's gonna take you.
It should be.
It's gonna.
Um, I would say it will be 10 minutes, but being my own boss, I need to give myself some buffer time, so like 15 to 20 minutes at most. Yeah.
Okay.
So the way we were doing this, I'm gonna just like create the main menu here. Here I'm gonna put, I don't know, -200. This will be the game title. The game is called Sonus Requiem for now. I believe it will stick, but I'm gonna leave it like this, so it will be really generic. And now let's say we do
So
not.
we really using this?
What?
Are we really using this for the project,
We'll
or
see that
just example?
it's
Oh,
really simple. This should be a variable
the,
also.
the best is that anything you do can be for the project.
Yeah.
That's being part of being your own boss.
Louis says, when running a business, I used to tell my sales team, whatever I say, double it and add a day. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good advice. Because
You read it
even
as
if
I
it was
cannot
too
read it.
much time, it will probably get done faster, and it will be a greater feeling that, oh, we work faster. But it's worse to have the other way around where you underestimate it. Yeah, that really sucks. Yeah. So we have our game title here. We will need to create our buttons. And let's say we do not know how many buttons we want here. The way we need to make sure that our game is ready to support any type of buttons is maybe by having somewhere to store them, right? In my case, usually a main menu. I know you mentioned a grid but that could take a little bit longer. So I'm gonna make it with a vertical box. In the main menu, I need buttons that are aligned with themselves. So here, bottom here, I can add to my vertical box, and I'm not seeing it. I'm gonna press fill, and every time I add a button, it should at least keep them aligned, right? And this is where you should probably define what type of aesthetic you want. If you want your buttons to always be vertical, horizontal, if you're using a grid, you should define how much space each button will use. And I believe the grid has something like that. it can be uniform here, and I believe there are padding, minimum desired slot width and height. So the buttons get to stick to the size that you want. In my case, the way I'm gonna define this is with the vertical box, and if I want my buttons to be larger, then I can just scale it up any of the ways, vertical or horizontal. And maybe in the vertical box, can I add a padding here? No. Yeah, for each button we can add 10 unit padding, so they are not in the same place, like at the same sticking to each other. And now you could create this scroll box. So if I added more, then you could scroll. Usually for a main menu, you really do not want that, so I'm gonna leave it like this. And now it's good to position stuff first at 0, then see the alignment. I want it at the center, and this is fine. So I'm pretty sure that this panel won't go to that farther than the half of the screen, but just to the bottom. So if we resize it, for example, I'm making a mobile game, then it's still working, right? Now, you could avoid using the fill button. If you don't do it, then it will just use the space that it needs. The button hasn't had any text inside it, so it's giving me like nothing. If I put text inside it, then I can have a defined size. Or if I didn't want any text here, I can just right click it and wrap it with a size box. And this size box will determine the size that I want. In this case, maybe the height override, I can put it to maybe 30, and then I can manually override how much size my button needs. So let's get about the modularity of the stuff. And it's really useful if, for example, let's put this as an example like this. I'm gonna delete the size box, replace with child here. My text block will be here, and I don't know why. Let's leave it like that for now. Let's say that we wanted to change the font on these two texts, and it's driving me crazy, so let's put fill here and duplicate this button. If I wanted to change the font, I could go through the details panel, and here I can change the font to something, maybe I do not want a bold font, I want a regular one. And I can select both and then change it like this. But it gets really cumbersome whenever we have more than one button, and we don't want to just change the text. Also, we want to change the image. What we need to do is this modular piece that will be our button. We will go to content, and in UI, I can create a blueprint, a widget blueprint, and I'm gonna call it just W button. W, just to make sure that it's not this will not be an interface, so I'm just calling it W, but you can follow any type of naming convention that you want. So menu button. Here, I will double click, I will get rid of my canvas panel, and I will add a button. Then here I will add the text. And now with this, I'm gonna save it, compile it. I'm gonna replace my buttons. Let me delete this and delete that. And I can add my, in user created, here should be my widget menu button. So now if I duplicate it, here it is. If I needed to change something here, I can just go to my widget. I want to change the text block. Maybe I want to change the font, regular, compile it, and everything that that button uses changes. This is really, really cool because you just need to change one class and everything changes. So it serves like a style blueprint. Now we can start adding this procedurally, and there are a lot of ways to do it. Usually you want it could be a data table, it could be a text file, whatever you're using. And if you're gonna use a data table, you can use a pre-construct because the data table will exist before this gets run. If you're using data that gets generated during runtime, then you would need to use the event struct or another event that runs after, because here in the pre-construct, not all the blueprints, well, if we're creating this menu at the same time as everything is being created, you may get null values or empty values. Let's create a data table for now. This is my UI, and I'm gonna create a new folder for the main menu. And I missed type. Here I will create an structure, so I can then use a data table for that structure. In blueprints structure, this will be my main menu options, and I haven't called it main menu because my structure, I just need here a name for now, and it could be a string, it could be a text also if we want to localize it. I'm probably gonna decide to be a text, and the first value should be kind of an ID, so maybe instead of being a text it will be a name, and the second value will be the string that I want to show in my text, so it will be a text, so it can be localized. Here will be my menu option ID, and here I will use menu option text, and here I will type none also, so I know that didn't work, or it could work. Now I'm gonna create a data table for me to get those values and create a structure. Well, create the data behind that will be using the structure. So the data tables are in miscellaneous data table. I'm gonna select the structure that I just created, menu options, and I'm gonna call it data table main menu options. And let's wait a little bit. There it is. Now I can populate the options that I want. I will create 2 for now. Here, add. My menu ID will be start. And I will put the same thing, so I don't waste more time. And here exit. Oh, it's usually quit. And I believe it's usually quit because it has to do with the language and the perception of the language. You're not exiting the game, you're quitting the game, so you're kind of giving up, and it messes with your psychology that no, I'm not a quitter, so you keep playing. And the row name, I'm gonna give it the same name.
Thought about that.
What?
I didn't thought about that. That was deep. Like, are you a quitter?
Yeah, everything is manipulation. So I have my options here. My row name is the true identifier, but I want to make sure that it's the same as this menu option, and I'm gonna not call this main menu option. Yeah, that's fine. Now we have to get the data. Let's go to my widget and let's get data table. And I can get the row names. I can select the data table here. And with these row names, I can get data table row. I'm gonna select the same data table. This should probably be a variable. Main. Compile it. Is it the default value I want? Yes, it is. Then I can do something like this. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna do it like this. One, because I don't believe this will change, but also because I wanted my out row to be to be of this type, of this main menu options, because I can break it and it will do it automatically. So I'm not gonna worry too much about this. I'm gonna do a for each loop, and I'm not gonna get too bothered about not being able to use a variable. This could be considered as hard coding, and it is hard coding. But if my widget is called main menu, my data table is called main menu, I do not, even by the naming, I was not thinking of making it like being useful for a lot of other stuff, so I'm not gonna get to worry about that. So with this row name, I'm gonna connect it like this, and now I have a loop for every asset that I have stored here. Well, not asset, every data that I have added. And now every time I iterate, I want to create a button. So where do I want to create it? Here in my panel. So I'm gonna make it a variable. Gonna call it vertical box menu. Well, options panel should be better. And now it's always the same with considering the capital letters as the same thing. Yeah, okay. Options panel. And now I can use this as a variable, get, and I will create widget, I'm gonna select my class that I want the button here, menu button. And I want to add to, and it's not to the viewport, it's to this. So I believe it was set parent or just parent. Remove from parent, get parent. It was add child. Here it is. And let's test if this works. I haven't done it in a while, so I'm gonna. This is a pre-construct. Let's see if it's working in the designer. Compile, and here it is, text block. If I needed to change these values, I need to make that text into a variable. So if I'm not using the, where is my button, my created button here, menu button, this value I can change. This is being generated by my data table. You can see it if I add another option here, add, save, and if I compile here, then a third value is added. So I need to go to my widget, my button widget, and let me close a lot of these tabs that I don't need for this example. That I know I said 10 minutes, but I already went past it.
Just keep going.
So now my widget button, I will make this text editable. So I'm gonna make it to a variable. Gonna call it text button. Well, button text. And here I can bind the text so it gets updated. Where is my text block? What is this? Advanced text settings. Now bind it, create a binding, and I'm gonna create a variable for this, promote to variable. I'm gonna call it button text. And with this, if I want something other than this class to edit it, I need to make it instance editable. Save it, and now I should be able to edit it from here. Button text, and it should change. It didn't change. Really sadness. What did I do wrong? Compile? No. Button text. Designer. Maybe it's because this I set it as a variable. Could be. Button text, button text. Otherwise I won't be able to use a... let me rebind it. Remove binding. This works. Yeah, this works. Binding. I could bind it directly to a property, but it isn't updating, so it's pretty weird. Let's try it even if it's not working for now. Let's go to my main menu. Gonna delete this and do a little test again. No, yeah. Let's not get to worry about it. But now we need to change the text here. So here, this has added a child. I want to change, set the text, the button text. And I want it to be the menu option text. It should be the same thing. So I could also set up the ID if I needed it, which I would need it whenever I click this button. I need to know which button I click, so that's why I added the ID here. But let's test it for now, and let me save everything. Yeah, it's not giving me anything here, but let's cross our fingers and hope it works in the game. I need to add my main menu. Let's go to let's add it in the level blueprint for now. Let's create a widget. Let's go to the class main menu and let's add it to the viewport. Now let's see. Start, quit, and none. Now it's working, and if I'm scaling it, I wanted a mobile game, then it's still gonna work. And if I scale it like this, then it's still maintaining the stuff. I don't know if that's what I understood the question to be, like being able to generate many options. And now I'm gonna see if I understood it wrong, which could be. Let me see. Sure, thanks. And by the way, it was a settings menu that I was having issues with due to the amount of options and them doing barely anything different when running a business. Yeah, the setting menu is always a pain in the ass. I recommend buying the marketplace stuff. There are a lot of menus there, and inspecting them, seeing if some of them could be useful to you, and having them as a starting point. And yeah, the field used to disappear for me when I changed it to blueprint. Add child, do you need to expose on spawn? Perfect, thank you, better than expected. This is the way I like to build things. Database, I did not know you could just delete the panel. I guess that's, yeah. Whenever you're building these, like the modular parts, you really do not need a canvas panel. You just need the widget that is gonna be useful to you. In this case, it was a button. It could have been a checkbox or whatever you want. If you need this to be a precise size, you can check here on the desired on screen. Here is just auto adapting on the type of text that I have here. But if you want a precise size, then you can wrap it with a size button here. Size box. And you can override it, or you can set up minimums and maximums. If I have a minimum width of maybe 500, then it won't go any smaller than that. But if my text increases, then it should be able to go past that. I missed some. Yeah. And also you can set up a maximum value. The size box are really useful for that. And you can look into, whenever you're working with UI, it's good to look into into the size box, into the scroll box. And sometimes there are a lot of times where, for example, you don't need, like, what have I done here? You don't need a panel like the vertical box or the horizontal box or a grid. Maybe you only just need one. You can look into the borders here that will have a single child, and these are very useful for dragging and dropping stuff in, because you have an image here, and whatever you put as a child, then it's also there, and you have a little marquee here, a border that you can edit later. So it's pretty useful stuff. And now I will take some water.
Good idea.
Oh, that's better. I'm gonna. Now, now, Mal, did I lost you with this example?
Definitely. But I'm forgiven, you know. I'm more of a ZBrush guy. But still, I'm trying to break my way into blueprints and more technical stuff in real. And I think I'm having some success with it, especially with visual parts like visual effects and level scripting, which is very useful. I mean, we're already told we are a team of 3 people, so you don't want to specialize so much that you don't touch other things because no one will do it.
Yeah, yeah. We used to talk about a lot of being specialized in something, which really did help us at the start, because at the start you're really bad at everything, so you need to to try to to shine in some area so you can be employed and start surviving, because we really do not encourage nobody to start being indie if you have not figure out a way to monetize your project or figure out a way to sustain yourself, because we did exactly that and we really had a bad time earning our first
Yeah,
dollars. $20 in the marketplace was like, oh, money, it exists.
yeah. I really don't recommend. I mean, you can try if you want, but don't tell me I didn't warn you.
Yeah, that's right, you can try if you want, but don't say we didn't tell you.
Yeah, I mean, making games is already very hard. Yeah, but I mean, like you said, it's just a good idea to specialize in something that actually makes you more valuable. Of course, in a indie game studio or in a small team, you will share responsibilities. I mean, there's no way around. But everyone should just have one thing that makes them valuable and actually exploit that so that most of the time you're doing that and the rest of the time you can split it up to other tasks. But like I said, I mean, you're good enough when they start paying you, right? I mean, this is one-on-one. Uh, how to say? Life basics one-on-one. Anything you do, like if you start getting offers and they start paying you, it makes you're good enough. I mean, it means someone is trying to find you because they want someone with your skills. So it depends up to you if you use those skills to that company or if you do it on your own. It's a good indicator when they already hire you. I mean, there's doesn't mean you're the best in the world, but at least you could say, okay, we're good enough. At least for those people, at least for someone that is not my family or my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you show what you do to your mom. Like, you always get, you're amazing. Like, open up Unreal, check the viewport, you can rotate. you're amazing. You go far.
Yeah, it's really nice when someone else from beside your friends or beside your family is willing to pay you for something. It's like, oh, I'm being appreciated, and I don't know, maybe respected.
Yeah, it's right. And I mean that takes years actually. So oh wait a
Oh
second.
my
Lewis sent us
goodness.
20 euros. Thank you so much. It's actually our first donation.
Yeah, we're gonna need to frame it and have it on I
Yeah,
don't know, in the wall.
right. Lewis, you will be remember. Thank you so much. Didn't expect this. I mean, we're just sharing knowledge with you guys.
I didn't even know that there was a donation system working.
There is once your channel is monetized,
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're
and
newly monetized also.
yeah, and like if you're wondering why you will monetize your channel, like it really doesn't give you much money, just a small bucks. Uh, but it does help YouTube to prioritize your videos over a bunch because, of course, you're being monetized. It's important for YouTube, so you will get more exposure than usual. That's why we monetize the videos. It's not really about the money there because really very little, especially for creating a game, it's not enough. But thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a milestone to be remembered.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, I mean, you really need to specialize. And then when you become good at something, uh, you start repeating it, and it will. I mean, it will naturally goes towards you wanting to try new things. Like, especially depending on the things you wanna do. Like, for example, for myself, I'm mostly into 3D, but I'm also interested in level scripting or level design and this kind of topics, which we cover a lot in the previous videos. Like a lot of these things uh, grab my attention, and it's like they combine, and you start creating some skill sets that actually help you in that very particular case, which you don't have the time in a AAA studio. You get really rusty. You repeat over and over the same things for years because I mean that's the reason they hire you is because you're good at this, so you will keep doing this uh, for the rest of your life, and that could bring some advantage. One of those is that you're extremely good at this this little thing, and usually it's very technical, and because you're really good at this, then that also limits your choices because when you want to try something new, it's like, oh man, like I am really good at this. Am I really going back to the basics? Like for I don't know, I just let's just say you love to do 3D characters and you're amazing at it, and then you want to try animation. I mean, of course you don't do animation at work, and so it's like you're spending your little precious time that can be used in anything, like playing games or go out or travel, just to study some another skill set that you're not good at. it really makes it harder when you specialize a lot, which makes you valuable, and at the same, it's a double-edged sword because someone can always hire you, and they can always need someone like with your skill set, and you cannot change it. And sometimes you just need a change, really. Like the deeper you go into specialization, like the better you are at something, the harder it is to change it because you're really good at it. But when you're good at something, that actually leaves you some time to experiment with new things, and you will actually learn faster. Like if I compare how fast I learn now that we are using Unreal 5, compared to when I start in 2012 with Unreal Engine 3, uh, I think I learned like 20 times faster. No exaggeration. Like I can grab the concepts really fast. I'm already very familiar with game development, and it's been like 9 years or so, and you learn faster. But I remember when I started out, like what's 3D, what's the viewport, what's a vertex, what's an edge, what's how does this work? Well, I don't even know what's the content browser, and I don't know where to start. And that takes time. I mean, it's natural. It's the when you learn something new, you're lost, completely lost.
Yeah, don't get discouraged because it
Yeah,
it happens
just
to everyone.
you see them as like I'm new in game development. I want to learn Unreal Engine 5 or 4, whatever. I want to make an RPG game, which is going to be a melee combat, I believe, system. Can anyone help me? Oh, there are a lot of things there. First, if you're new to Unreal Engine 5, I will advise to step back a little bit before going to make your RPG game and just get a little bit familiar with the tools and the environment and the framework, and you know getting more confident about what you can do and what you cannot do yet. Um, and then
Yeah,
you will have more experience
think more in
on
terms
game.
of mechanics. Don't think about making a game. Think about what's the more important part of your game, and developing
Mm,
developing like only that mechanic can help you focus a lot, so you're not wasting time on things that are not gonna be useful right now. So if, for example, your melee combat system is the main part, you should probably look there. I have seen like a lot of tutorials of on how to do them. They all carry their own philosophies of why they're doing, and they work in their context, right, in their game. So but knowing how they do it give you a lot of ideas on how you can do it. And first there's gonna be a lot of copy and paste, like, oh, he did it like this or she did it like that. But then you will start making sense of a lot of the code that repeats itself, and with that you can start making your own decisions, like, no, this doesn't work for me because etc etc etc, and that helps a lot.
mm. Yeah, same applies to any kind of thing you want to learn. Like it's easier to learn piece by piece instead of like, for example, right now I'm trying to create a tutorial uh, to show the chaos destruction in Unreal, and I'm planning to put like a fortress or a castle like you can destroy and it falls down and you have the visual effects and everything. That's a lot to cover, and you will get an anxiety attack if you think about how many things you need to do. and especially how many new things you need to learn. And so I just take it pieces by pieces. Like I want to start learning, uh, how to cut the pieces, and then how to add the special effects and how they work. And it's just day by day. I cannot get all the information in one day, but just little by uh, little pieces that actually give you enough confidence. I just try to play with it and just try to break it. There are a lot of content examples in the Epic Games launcher. Uh, I'm not sure exactly if there is an RPG one, Melee, um, but there are for sure a lot of game samples that you can play with and take a look how they make it and try to break it. Play with things to see how they change. I think that's the best way to learn, like just breaking up things, just trying to play with it and just have fun. Really, it's gonna take a while. But I highly recommend starting with any introduction tutorials for Unreal, for introduction to blueprints, and basic things like how to create a level, things like that. Very simple. Once you get into that, can go into very specifics. You will have much more confidence, especially right now that you're new. You will once you get the confidence, you will see that how you can make it for sure. Lewis says that scripting element is quite nice. Although I have been specializing in so many areas, having web developer, PHP programmer, C# application developer, architect, AWS engineer, cloud engineer. My goodness.
And now game developer.
And now game developer. This is
That's a lot of experience.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that specializing is for insects. Like we have so many unique things, each one of us, very unique experience, very specific talents. A lot of things can be taught at tutorials, courses, schools, whatever. This is the kind of stuff that gets mass produced, right? Like first, if you go to university, you have the curriculum and you have the courses you need to take. Those courses are created because there is an industry that asks for a specific knowledge that could potentially hire you if you learn these technical skills. The problem with that is that it's mass produced. Anyone that was in your class essentially got the same knowledge as you. Everyone learned the same. Everyone learned the same process. Everyone maybe did the same project, which makes you look more like a robot, right? Because this is mass produced. You learned some stuff, but it's not very unique, and for sure it can be replaceable. Because if they teach you to do that, and they also teach other people to do that the same, then that means you're replaceable in the job. Because if it's already teaching in the school, it means a lot of people know what you already know. This is where I believe, instead of specializing in something, knowing a lot of things and combining them to create something new can make you stand out and actually don't compete, just eliminate competition just by being unique. But that doesn't mean you just try one thing one day and you change another one. Just you become good at something and then you try another thing and you become good at it. Then you try to combine those to create something unique, and then eventually it's like you have different skills instead of only one. You could have your signature move. perhaps. Like with this, I feel learning programming has been great to learn. As even if I don't know the language, I still understand the concepts. Although I never went to university, I just self-study programming and AWS. No, that's great. I mean, self-taught is the best way to learn. Uh, I don't know if you remember 3D Bus, Ram. We took the course for I think it's .NET,
Yeah, .NET framework.
and I mean we were in the university, and
Yeah, we took that
it was
course to be able to pass a university course that was not explained very
like not
well.
even it was not even close to what we learn online. And I mean, we took like 2 years. So it took like 2 years of C++, a lot of things, and then we decided to learn from 3D Bus. Sadly, 3D Bus is not available anymore. Uh, but it was my first experience with an online programming course, and I learned so much, and I just paid like $50, and in the university you pay like I don't know $2,000 per semester,
Yeah.
something like that. I learned so many things, and it was so much fun with who was Steve and Nelson, Nelson Laquette, and I learned so much about programming, and that was one of the first programming courses that I actually enjoy. And I thought myself like, man, if I just self study from like 2 years ago like this, be a machine now, I'd be unstoppable. It's just so nice everything you can get on the internet now, and very accessible, very cheap, most of the time free, and I think universities are an outdated concept actually. How many years have we had in university? I'm not
How many
really
years?
into
What?
history, but I would say more than 500, right? Universities exist in the world. Maybe
Mm,
more than 500. According to Age of Empires, you can create a university to learn. That's my source of information. Uh,
yeah, sure,
but
sure.
uh, look at how many like years ago, not so long ago, like pre-internet, the only way to access the information was through books. That's the only way, and actually someone teaching you. Uh, and most of these resources are inside the universities and the institutions, private institutions or universities, you name it. You have no choice but to go there to learn. And if you want to go to the library, which one has the biggest library? Always the university. It's it's just in the recent years that has changed. I mean, things have changed so much in the last years. Too fast. Uh, and now you have access to all this information for free, like in your pocket with your phone, streaming anywhere. Uh, I think it just the value of the universities gets lower and lower, especially with this internet education movement. It's really hard for them to compete now, especially with those prices. I mean, what do you have that I don't know my $50 internet course doesn't?
Yeah, it became like assisting to the university is more about meeting the people there, not so much learning there, because those contacts can get really useful. like I met you in university, right? And we
Yeah.
had, even though we were in the same, studying the same, but uh, it's the value becomes more about maybe the professors you can meet, the other students that you're meeting, because most of them, depending on what you're going to study, have the same interests, so it's easier to meet people. But other than that, if you're just wanting the knowledge part, then yeah, at least in our country, education is really lacking.
Yeah, it's a very expensive club, but I mean, you cannot underestimate the value of social capital. Uh, there's so many people you can meet, but also outside. I mean, I'm not saying that universities shouldn't stop existing, but the point is we shouldn't look as self-taught as it's like this doesn't have any value. Like you're
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
really good. I
We
mean,
get
that's what
get that a lot here.
that's my main point. I mean, just because you don't go to university, that doesn't mean you don't know your stuff. There's so many people that know a lot of things. Like for me, I learned 3D self-taught. I never went to any university or uh, just
Yeah, or an
I
art
didn't pay.
institution, nothing like that.
Oh, yeah, and I just have self-taught, and I've managed to go well in my career. I mean, I work in the industry and I get paid for that, and I have no degree related to that type of job that I do. So it just proves that times has changed. The only constant thing in life is change. Like that universities, I find, are dead on IT industry. We have people from there who may know about GPUs, yet any relevant information on how to do the job does not help. I asked what infrastructure as code is and had no idea. That's a problem with universities. Like, uh, uh, it's also a business, so you need to put the curriculum in a way you can attract the most amount of students. Some universities do it really bad. Some universities are better there. Uh, but it gets really academical, especially when you teach something. Especially when we have teach courses, um, we try to get as practical as possible, and just the fact that you have to structure everything makes it a little bit flexible to learn new things. Uh, but yeah, that's the downside. I find self-taught people have more merit as they have gone out of their way to learn something instead of drinking. However, networking is my value. No IT people here. Yeah, I mean, like we said, they deserve more merit. Self-taught education is a real education. Like
Did you
it,
say Unreal?
it's unreal education. By the way, there are a lot of tutorials in Unreal Academy uh, for free, especially for beginners. Very well structured, and I think they're doing a really nice job there. But yeah, self-taught has its sacrifice. Um, because the grade, you don't do it for the grade. You just need to train hard and show the results, and that and you for sure you will sacrifice a lot of days to go out drinking. I did that a lot when I was studying 3D and the university, and then we had our company. Uh, it's just too much to learn. There's no time to go out, but it pays off. I mean, look at the times we're living now with the corona and everything moving digital. And what the virus did is like all this, let's just say, irrelevant jobs that are going to disappear by technology eventually. Uh, I don't think there's going back from after this is finished. This is the new this is the new way of working. And a lot of people that uh, lost their jobs were jobs that do not require um, a lot of specific knowledge. It was just a title and just some management position. And when things get hard, you really think twice if you really need that guy over the guy that actually creates something and produces a product that actually you can sell, especially in tough times like now. Where you find a lot of IT people drinking? Game development conference.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
It's an amazing experience. I mean, usually when you go out, you don't find this kind of people. And during those days, it's filled with a lot of people from the industry. Some guys are new, some guys are veterans, and they're just there for one reason: to party and have fun. And the only topics in the party, you guessed it, IT topics, game development, programming, 3D. It's really fun party actually. One of the few parties that you can actually talk a lot.
Yeah, and there usually are a lot of reference to probably the same media that you consume, and talking
Yep.
about favorite games, movies, usually anime, usually JoJo. It's really fun
Jojo
stuff.
is in almost any kind of event, no matter the industry. Jojo is taking over.
Yeah.
Lewis asked how did you make that straight line blueprints? I believe it's the pin you put to organize.
What? Ah, the straight line.
Mm.
Any wire that you want to neatly organize, you just need to double click, and this is called a reroute node, and you can just organize it. It's easier if you just select two of these and press Q, and you straighten it right away. And there are a lot of alignments. This makes things really easy to organize, so you don't have to click too much with your mouse, which I suffer a lot, and my hand gets really tired really easily. So yeah, really cool stuff to organize. But but yeah, I don't know if you have any other topic you want to discuss. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
Yeah, it's been 2 hours, but worry not. Uh, we'll come every week to show more of the progress of the game. It will still keep doing the tutorials, uh, but um, at least for the live streamings for now, we just want to develop the game and share with you guys how we create it. Hopefully, it will be an interesting thing to see in the future. I mean, we actually recorded all the steps, how it looked like at the beginning, and you can see the game after 1 month or 2 months, like how it looks now. Uh, it it really encourages you to keep working on it because you can see some progress, and especially when it's finished, you can see like the beginnings of the beginnings. Is a really interesting material to record. I mean, to show really how these games are made, and you can go back in time and have fun
Yeah, how much
looking at
it took
how it
us.
evolved. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks
So
for
you,
coming. Thanks again to
mm,
Louis.
yeah, you rock, man.
And there will be more. Hopefully, you will attend again. And thanks again to everyone that left a question. I know it was a little slow at the start, but things will get more interesting as we progress through the game, and we will have more to show. Hopefully
By the
soon.
way, what
Oh,
do you have now? What do you have now?
now, yeah, you
Yeah.
remember that we could move. Yeah, now we can select.
Yeah.
We can click, select, and now we are
Damn.
moving. And yeah, that's it. And well, the main menu also is done, and it's data driven, so it's pretty good.
Nice.
Pretty good.
Thanks to Lewis, we have main menu for our game.
Yeah, wasn't planned, but it was a nice example. And talking about data driven gameplay, it's always fun, at least for me. Let's just commit everything and we can end the stream.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Of course, see you next week. And if you want to chat with us, feel free to join us in the Discord server. There are some links in the description, in the video and in the channel. And of course, the channel has a lot of tutorials. If you're new to game development, there are a lot of things like introduction to blueprints, modeling, level design, a lot of topics actually. So I'm sure if you deep to the content, you will find a lot of valuable information there.
Yeah.
So that's it for me.
See you next time and take care.